Hi everyone, and welcome to our global perspective lesson of week 3. We are still continuing to discuss, we are still continuing with unit 1, improving on communication. Now, this time we want to find out where did it start. Um, in this lesson, the objectives that we'll be looking at: one, we'll research and identify historical methods of communication, identify the ways and methods that were used long time ago to communicate. We will include a range of options such as face-to-face communication, letters delivered by pigeon, horse rider, car, train, etc. Handwritten, books, scrolls, printed books, flags, e.g. on ships or semaphore, smoke signals, sound signals, e.g. drums, horns, bells, electronic communication, e.g. telegrams, Morse code, email. Now those are the objectives that we'll be looking at. Now we still continue asking ourselves, what is communication? Communication is the act of conveying meanings of messages or information from one person or group of people to another or others through the use of generally understood signs, symbols, and other means. You would see here when you look at this picture, it gives you some message. You'd get to know what actually is happening here, and this message is conveyed through. You can see two people talking, some people playing. They are playing things and all that, but there's a way it tells you what is going on. Now, uh, which ways and methods were used for communication long ago? Now, then and now, then and now, during that time and now, communication through the ages. We would use smoke signals, which were used by indigenous tribes in the 1500s, the year 1500s. Now, pigeon posts, these were used by the Romans more than 2000 years ago. Snail mail, the earliest surviving piece of mail from 255 BC. Electrical telegraph, first American electrical telegraph invented in 1836. Then we have the telephone, first telephone patented or was created in 1876. Then came the text messaging, video messaging, and all that. Now, let's look at the history of communication. The history of communication itself can be traced back since the origin of speech, circa 500,000 BC. The use of technology in communication may be considered since the first use of symbols about 30,000 years BC. When we look at the history of communication, we start with the most primitive times. This is primitive means when people did not know most of the things. So communication was done by cave paintings. You can see these are cave paintings. This was 15,000 years ago. People were using cave paintings. You can see how the paintings look like. Then the next improvement from cave paintings was petroglyphs. Petroglyphs. Now, petroglyphs are carving into a rock surface. It's just you get a rock surface, and then you do some carvings on them. This is about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. You can see these are rock carvings. petroglyphs from Algesta, Sweden, Nordic. So they were using these kinds of communication. Then came the pictograms. Now, pictograms, something to do with pictures, symbols representing concept. Pictograms are actually symbols. We use them even in mathematics. You can see them. They are symbols representing concept, object, activity, place, or event. Now, these are pictographs from 1510 telling a story of coming of events. You can see now coming of events and things. You can see all these are pictograms, and pictograms are not anything new to you. You know them in mathematics mostly. Then came the ideograms. Now, these are graphical symbols that represent an idea. The beginning of the Lord's Prayer in Mi'kmaq, hieroglyphic writing. The text reads this kind of writing here, Our Father in heaven. So this is a text, this is a way of communication. This was done long time ago. So it says Our Father in heaven. So these ones you can see some N, Shinen, Wajok. So it's a way of making communication. So these are signs. This is like a star, and then we look at this. So it communicates a message to you. Then came the writing. So all that time we have been using pictures, drawings, and all that. Then came the writing. Now the early writings are there, the alphabets, the storytelling. You can see that this is a specimen. So this is now the beginning of writings coming into being. You move on, and then you now come to the history of telecommunication. That is when people now would start using the gadgets. So when we are looking at the history of telecommunication, we'll first of all start with the pre-electric, the time before electric. There was communication there. Then followed the telegraph. Then followed the landline telephone, where all it's connected with wires throughout the world. Then came the phonograph. Then came the radio and television. Then came the fax, right? And then the mobile telephone, the computers, and the internet. So it has been a long way. So the history of communication, we can look at it. After now we have come to the writing, then we look at the pre-electric times, telegraph, all the way to now we can have computers and internets. Now with that, that is enough for the history of communication. What remains for you is to continue doing more research and come out with a more detailed history of communication, ways by which people are communicating long time before we would these are the ways, these recent ways would come into being. So the assignment that you do is you'd research the history of communication. I've just given you a hint, but you can research and you'll find more information about communication. Then after researching, then you will use a manila paper or any other hard paper that you can find, where you can make a poster of timeline of communication. Timeline simply means you find a way when this one started at this time and this until now, the present age. So you make a timeline you make a poster, you'll get diagrams and some pictures of communication, that when communication began, and you write the name. Then after you've done all that, you take a picture of your poster. After taking a picture of your poster, then you know very well where you will submit it. You will send it as an attachment in the classroom, in your Google Classroom. Then I will see. And that is all. And thank you so much for listening.